So I had the chance to see Dreamworks' latest animated film, Orion in the Dark, early, and if I'm being frank, it is easily one of the best films of 2024 so far. Now I know that isn't really saying a lot since January didn't really set the bar very high anyway, but I promise you, Orion in the Dark is nothing less than phenomenal, so much so that I wouldn't be surprised if this film ends up remaining in my top 10 movies of 2024. Now anyone who has been subscribed to my channel may know that I very rarely make video reviews, since that's not really the type of content I'm primarily interested in making, so you may be asking yourself, hey, what the hell is so great about this movie that this dumb weep here had to make an entire review about it? Well, the biggest and quite possibly the only reason I even watched Orion in the Dark, much less made an entire video about the film, is because a couple months ago I discovered that it was written by Charlie Kaufman, my favorite screenwriter of all time. For those who aren't familiar with Kaufman, this is the same man responsible for writing my second favorite movie of all time, as well as other movies I consider masterpieces like Being John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Synecdoche, New York, Anomalisa, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. As you can see, the guy's got quite the resume, so naturally, if his name is slapped on anything, I'm going to see it no matter what. And I'm so glad I did, because as I mentioned earlier, this movie is truly phenomenal, and I loved every single minute of it. Now, at the time of this video's release, Orion in the Dark won't be available for viewers like you to watch until February 2nd, so I'm not going to be discussing a lot of story-related stuff, because believe it or not, there are a surprising number of narrative beats that can be spoiled, and I'd rather you just discover these moments yourself when you watch the film. However, I will say this, if you are a Charlie Kaufman fan like me, and you weren't impressed by the trailers because you thought that Dreamworks was neutering Kaufman's script to make some generic baby movie bullshit, do not fret, because the trailers are incredibly misleading and only show a certain fraction of what this film has to offer. At the end of the day, this is through and through a Charlie Kaufman film, a much more approachable, mainstream, and family-friendly Kaufman film, but a Kaufman film nonetheless, and the biggest reason why it feels that way is thanks to its excellent script. The writing is easily the best thing about Orion in the Dark, as it encapsulates many of the same aspects that have defined Kaufman's previous movies. For example, the main character of Orion is fundamentally a typical Kaufman protagonist. He talks like one, he has the same existential fears and social anxiety as one, and ultimately he's thrown into a surreal, abstract world that forces him to confront said existential fears and social anxiety like the ones before him. It's really amazing how Kaufman is able to balance both his usual meta, introspective, and quirky dialogue with essentially just normal kids talk, because even though Orion embodies a lot of Kaufmanisms, he's able to communicate them in a way that not only makes sense for a kid to understand, but even relate to Orion's own internal struggles. Now, while I certainly don't think kids are having trouble with their fears to nearly the same extent that Orion has in the film, considering that he's afraid of literally everything, including the dark, but the way that he internalizes his fear through sketches and voiceover narration is presented in a way that makes sense and even relatable. There's this level of sweetness and comfort that I'm just not used to experiencing while watching a Kaufman film, but it also makes sense why these feelings exist in the first place, because Orion in the Dark is ultimately a kid's movie, and while it is filled to the brim with Kaufmanisms that I've come to expect and love, there's this sense of hope inserted in the film that blends very well with Kaufman's normal foray into existential and surrealist dread. Aw man, I really wish I could just dig deep into the story, because in my opinion, there's so much to unpack that I'd love to just get into the nitty-gritty of, but alas, I must keep everything spoiler-free. Let me know in the comments though if you guys are interested in a spoiler version of this video, as I would be down to make one if there's enough interest, but anyway, let's keep going with the review. Now, if you're not super familiar with Kaufman's work and you take aside the more existential moments of the film, I really do like a lot of what else the film has to offer. If you don't know, the basic premise of Orion in the Dark is that Dark, who is this shadowy cloaked figure, goes on an adventure with Orion and shows him all the inner workings of not only how nighttime operates, but why it's an important aspect of life that kids like himself don't need to be afraid of. Dark introduces Orion to these beings called the Night Entities, who help him with his job of maintaining nighttime, and I really do like these characters. They're quirky, they have their own distinct design and personalities, and they're overall just as entertaining characters as Orion in the Dark.
He said it! He said it!
This whole concept of what if the dark and its fundamental elements had emotions and personalities was not only cute, but it honestly kind of reminded me of some of Pixar's best, like Inside Out, which is funny that I even made that comparison, considering Kaufman's feelings towards that movie.
Did you like Inside Out? Because I have to confess I did. I loved it.
Duke, you want to feel that?
And since I'm mentioning all the major characters, I might as well also add that all the voice actors do a really good job. Jacob Tremblay does a great job playing Orion, Paul Walter Hauser is exceptional as Dark, and all the supporting cast members who play the Night Entities fit their roles very well. Additionally, to continue going on about the more technical elements of this film, this is a gorgeously animated and visually striking movie. The film's use of color is just remarkable, as it not only uses a wide variety of colors that really help make the film pop visually, but it has this almost watercolor-esque aesthetic that really really adds to the film's surreal, almost sleepy atmosphere. After movies like The Bad Guys and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, we seem to be in this new wave of Dreamworks movies where the studio's willing to play around and try something new with their animation, and this is certainly the case with Orion in the Dark. Not only does the film look great, but it also gets surprisingly creative with its animation, as there are several moments throughout the film in which the movie also utilizes simple 2D animations as well, which makes sense since Orion's character draws a lot in his sketchbook, and everything that he draws is projected onto the screen as sort of homemade 2D animated bits. Overall, this is just a really creative and fun movie that really took the best of both worlds, melding together both Kaufman's genius approach to writing and DreamWorks' recent approach to making animated films, and the end result is a pretty amazing movie that I consider to be one of 2024's best. Now obviously that's premature to say since it's not even February and the current bar for movies isn't exactly high, but the fact that I saw this movie twice before I finally sat down and wrote this stupid script really goes to show how much this movie spoke to me and reminded me why I love Kaufman and his work. Now, do I think this is on the same level as his other films? Not really, but this is still a movie absolutely worth your time, whether you're a diehard Kaufman fan like me or a more casual moviegoer looking for something fun to watch. Check it out, and I'm giving Orion in the Dark an 8 out of 10. Hope you all enjoyed this video because soon I'll be going back to talking about anime shit, so naturally,
I'm gonna get real weird with it.
So I'll see you all then. Peace.